It is always a pleasure to talk to José-Luis Novo, who is the music director of the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra.
My pleasure.
And we have a really lovely group of composers to talk about: Franz Schubert, Lowell Lieberman, and Antonin Dvořák. And I'm all very excited about this concert that will take place at the Maryland Hall for the Creative Arts in Annapolis, November 4th and 5th. So we start with one of the most extraordinary composers of Western music. That would be Franz Schubert. You can see his glasses here. He was very famous for them. And we were just talking about what an incredible loss it is that this composer of over 1,000 pieces of music is dead at 31 years.
Yeah, and I think that we will never know what the music world would have been had he lived 20 years longer or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of a Schubert living into the 1870s. I mean, so remarkable. And I mean, a person who came actually from Vienna, the only one of the Viennese great classical composers who came from Vienna, was a school teacher by profession, and which is not a particularly great job economically or in terms of prestige, but still managed to write extraordinary music.
Yeah, and I think as I imagine you would agree, with a lyrical sense that is second to no one. I mean, the guy could write melodies better than, I mean, it was the time of Beethoven, and I think Beethoven probably, I don't know, but probably he was jealous of the melodies that Schubert could write.
Yeah, astonishing. And they did know each other somewhat. Yeah. And they do overlap quite a long time, and they're living in the same place. Schubert spends his whole life in Vienna, and Beethoven's in Vienna from 1792. So, and I mean, the astonishing thing is Beethoven dies the year before Schubert dies. Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Basically mind-boggling. This is the house where Schubert grew up on beautiful Nussdorfer Strasse, Nut Village Street, as it were, which is a museum, of course, to him today. And, well, it should be. As you can see, it's just a house. This is like anything else. There's a person, from, I guess you'd say lower middle class, I suppose, economically. But it seems to have been a happy home. He seems to have brothers who he got along with, his parents who he got along with, and I think this is reflected in a lot of his music.
I think his music in general is happy, and it has a hopeful feeling to it.
Yeah. This is the inside of his home from around 1914, which became, of course, a museum. So it's been around for a long time. And just, your average home, nothing fancy. And I was very tempted because I'm always fascinated, before photography, what did people actually look like? And Schubert was painted a lot, both posthumously and during his life. So this is one from 1814, Josef Abel, who painted that. I think that's an interesting portrait of young Schubert. And of course, they're all young Schubert. He died 31. It's all young. This was initially started as a watercolor 2 years before Schubert's death, and then became an oil painting long after Schubert had passed. I think that's an interesting one. And we see him writing music from, I would assume, they said the second he finished a piece, he started another one.
I mean, otherwise it would have been impossible if he wrote over 600 songs and
tons of chamber
symphonies
music.
And I mean, there are still some symphonies that we don't know if he finished or if they were completely his. So there's a lot, several masses and
beautiful masses. Yeah, lovely. Another one here from 1825, Wilhelm August Rieder. I mean, it's so interesting, so much of this effort to, and this, once again, now we're into posthumous Schubert portrayal. And of course, Schubert became far more popular after his death than before, sadly. Here's another one by Josef Kupelwieser, who is a member of Schubert's circle. One thing Schubert did have going for him were friends.
Well, I think he was a more social person than, let's say, Beethoven was.
Yeah. Beethoven had admirers,
but
not too many friends. A much more easy person, certainly. I love this picture. This is a picture of Johann Michael Vogel, who was a great singer who sang many of Schubert's songs, baritone, and you can see them both depicted in caricature, and Vogel is a good 1.5 feet, never mind the hat, than Schubert, who was very tiny. And apparently they were great friends, and Vogel being very much the extrovert, and Schubert being a bit of the introvert, and painted by Franz von Schober, who, if I'm not mistaken, wrote the lyrics to the song An die Musik, and was also part of that Schubertian circle. This is another one by Franz Eibel, portrait from 1827, the year of Schubert's death. Really, I think it's very interesting. So here's just a bunch of them collected. And the other thing that I think, before we talk about the music in Rosamunde, were the Schubertiades, these grand occasions where Schubert would, entertain, and it was a way of exposing his music to at least small crowds of people. And I don't know if Schubert made any money at them, but they were very, full of Gemütlichkeit and
I think that idea of Schubert is still common now. People still do them, and they oftentimes they call them Schubertiades because that's what it is.
It's a beautiful thing.
Gathering for music.
Here's Vogel and Schubert at the piano. And Schubert, even though he wrote unbelievably impressive piano sonatas, was not, a virtuoso, and almost as if he wrote these for other people to play, as opposed to Beethoven, who could play Beethoven's music with Beethoven in some ways.
Yeah, but when you think of things like the B-flat piano sonata, is one of those masterpieces that we could not live without.
Absolutely. And the last three of his sonatas, amazing. Yeah. This is a personal favorite, Klimt in 1899, painting Schubert. I mean, what an incredible thing. Schubert is long gone, but the influence is still there, and the love of this Viennese master.
It's part of the Vienna cultural life.
Absolutely. From one master to another. And of course, I couldn't resist a little Andy Warhol Schubert. I think it's appropriate. Now, this piece, I brought you four excerpts from this extraordinary incidental music to Rosamunde. The play by, it opened and closed in 2 performances.
Yeah, it was a complete disaster of a project.
Yeah.
But we got some very good music. One is the overture. Some of the entr'actes are also very good.
Right, some nice dance music. Helmina von Cesi was her name. She was an interesting person, a journalist and a writer. Quite the figure in Viennese society. Lived into her 70s, interestingly enough. Very, very interesting person. So this is the beginning of the piece, which is sort of, and before we talk about the beginning of the piece, this is a recycled work from another piece, correct?
Yeah, because the overture that now we call by Rosamunde overture was not performed at the premiere of this incidental music because Schubert had very little time, so he had to use a different piece of music to use as an overture. He created this afterwards, but he created this by recycling a previous overture that was originally called on the Italian style.
Right.
So the title and the music really have nothing in common.
Right. So first he used Alfonso and Estrella, and then for the actual music, when it was published, we have the overture to the Magic Harp, and that's what we hear. Now the beginning is so serious and so dramatic.
Yeah, it is a little ominous, like something really bad is going to happen.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting about this is right after this, Schubert gives us a very lyrical moment. And by the way, I'm using Schubertiade paintings because like Schubert was painted often, Schubertiades are painted often, both during Schubert's life and especially afterwards, in great homage to him, because Schubert also becomes sort of one of the essential things of German culture, as people have song cycles in concert halls and people go back to Schubert's music as the beginning of this. And after we have this serious melody, we have this very poignant exquisite bit of Schubertian melody, which Schubert just seems to have been able to do with his eyes closed.
Yeah.
I mean, how lucky are your orchestra musicians who get to play that stuff?
Oh, it's just listening to this, and you hear these modulations to the major that they happen so smoothly, and it's like a ray of light that comes into the room.
Yeah, and nice to spotlight the winds. That's exactly what it is. And then, so this is in sort of sonata form, and like in all well-behaved sonata forms, you've got two themes, and just all the poignancy of that moment is just swept away by the opening of the Allegro.
Which is all of a sudden happy, uplifting music in the best Italian traditions.
Absolutely. So this is an unfinished Schubertiad, by the way, and it's also exquisite. And by the way, I didn't include the beautiful modulatory bridge that happens in between these two themes, which is just as good as the actual themes. And, you know, Rossini was in Vienna around this time, and you're right, it's so Italian and so elegant and graceful. And
I mean, still you can hear Schubert behind it, but the spirit of the lightness,
yes,
that comes from Italian music that I think Schubert was emulating somehow.
Absolutely. And for our second theme, and this is my last Schubertiad to show you, the second theme is contrasting and lyrical and just stunning. And lastly, before we say goodbye to Schubert, this is his original grave where he was buried in Währing. Now he is in the Central Friedhof with everybody else, all the great composers of Vienna and Austria. But initially he was buried here, and because he wasn't anybody important. He hadn't become a musical god yet. But later in the 19th century, thank goodness he does. And here's the beautiful Schubert Denkmal, the memorial. Monument, which he so rightly deserves. Yeah. Now the middle piece is a commission that finally, because of pandemic, you are getting around to, and that will be Lowell Lieberman, correct?
Well, the commission was pre-pandemic.
I
The concerto was written in 2017. We actually have performed the concerto before. But we are scheduling again because we are actually doing the world premiere recording. So we are going to be recording the concerto for an album that we are going to be producing at the end of December or January. And this was a co-commission between a few orchestras. The Toledo Symphony got to do the premiere, and then there is the Springfield Symphony, both from Massachusetts, and the Springfield Symphony from Ohio. Jackson Symphony and the, I think, Jacksonville Symphony in Florida as well, and ourselves. And this has been really a commission directly from the soloist Julian Schwartz to Lowell Lieberman, and it's a gorgeous piece actually. And I think it fits perfectly in this program because Lowell Lieberman is one of our most lyrical living composers in America, and he in many ways similar to the overture by Schubert and also the symphony by Dvořák. It starts kind of in a introspective way, and the piece grows into a very strong ending, and I think that is incredibly powerful, and the some of the characteristics of Lieberman's writing, which is sections of polytonality and neo-romanticism. It's all in there with a great solo writing for the cello that is very well portrayed by our soloist, and then the orchestration is quite rich, so the orchestra contributes a lot to the texture.
Well, and he's written things like a flute concerto for James Galway. This is a very established composer. This is him in earlier days. This is him today, and I think his music's lovely, and this should be a very, very interesting journey. And the world needs cello concertos.
And this is why we are doing the recording, because we think that this is going to be part of the cello repertoire.
Nice. Well, we'll look forward to airing it on WBJC when it happens. And how different is it? You know, people probably wonder, how different is it to do this live in the concert hall and then to do it in the recording studio?
Well, it's very different, because when you do it on the recording studio, you know, if something goes wrong, you can fix it. But we are doing a live performance. But the live performance is not all bad, because it has the feeling of the performance that is very difficult to get on a studio.
Yeah.
So it might not be all perfect, but I think I personally prefer live performances, live recordings, because they are much more. They have a natural feeling to it that you don't get in recordings.
Oh, there's
and
a
when you listen
happens.
to them carefully,
Yeah.
recordings, you can always hear the pasting of the different takes.
Right.
It doesn't matter how good you do. I mean, now you can do incredible things with editing, but still, you hear more than just the excerpts. You hear the moods. You hear the where the interpreters are in the moment where they...
There's a sense of energy and a sense of
Yeah.
intensity that is very hard to do in the studio.
Yeah,
It's really hard. It can be done.
but it's very difficult.
But it's really challenging, and you're always trading, I think, in both
Yeah.
ways. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, but you're always going to be trading. And also, I think there's certain artists who excel at one and excel at the other.
Yeah.
You know, certain artists love the studio and feel very at home and can really, and for other people, it's a very frustrating experience.
I mean, you have people like Glenn Gould, who
Yeah.
was an
Yes.
artist of studio. He
Correct.
wanted to micromanage every single thing that was coming out of his piano, and he could only do it on a studio.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, and found no joy in live performance, whereas you find a lot of joy. I can tell just how the way you're speaking, that to be in front of an audience and to present music and share music, that's a joyous thing.
I mean, for me, the aspect, the one of the most powerful aspects of music is sharing it with other people, and the experience that you have when you are sharing something that is really a work of art with people that they are experiencing that at the very same moment. That's something that only happens when we perform, and not even when you play this on a recording afterwards. When you are with other people, it's a completely different experience.
Absolutely. I describe Antonin Dvořák, here pictured in 1882. I describe Antonin Dvořák as, back in the day when it was an election thing, it was like, this is a candidate you'd want to have a beer with, and Antonin Dvořák is the sort of guy I think you would enjoy his company and you'd want to spend time with. He was congenial, a family man, a late...
Good nature.
Good-natured,
Yeah.
and it shows in his music. I had a good friend who's gone too many years now, who said he never wrote an ugly note.
No, he didn't.
And this, I think, this Seventh Symphony, would you say it's his finest symphony?
I'm not sure if I'm the one to say that, but I think it is my favorite because it has the most that you can take out as a conductor and as a musician. There is so much in this piece. I, of course, love number 8 and number 9, but this one is special because for me it's almost the final stamp for Dvořák that here I am to stay. I think that the Sixth Symphony was a great effort to sort of make himself known apart from the Brahmses and the other great composers of the time. But with the seventh, he didn't have to do that. I mean, the music does it for him.
Yeah, and interesting, the key of B minor. I mean, unusual key and dark.
D minor. Yeah.
D minor, sorry,
Yeah.
D minor. Yeah, I mean, I said in a podcast, it's in D minor, the key of such light classics as the Mozart Requiem and Beethoven's Ninth Symphony.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean-
and I think that's part of the fate that you feel with the symphonies. It starts in a somber mood and ends also in a somber mood, but with a ray of hope. But I think that, and throughout the symphony, you have moments of ecstatic beauty. But I think that in some ways, it exemplifies the not only the struggles that Dvořák had to go through as a composer and as a human being, but also the type of struggles that we as human beings have to deal with, and then how we find solutions to them. It's oftentimes a mystery, and this is what this symphony is the mystery of dealing with things in a way that we manage to cope with, even if we don't understand it. For me, it's such a wonderful mix of happy and sad moments at the same time, in a way that is so connected that it's impossible to take it apart.
Nice. Yeah, this is Dvořák around 26 or 27 when his career was just starting to get going. Around the time when he fell in love with the wrong sister. He married the one that he initially wanted, like Mozart actually. It didn't work out with sister one, it worked out with his wife Anna. This is his home and in the countryside. And his father was an innkeeper butcher, and I think probably had Dvořák not shown incredible musical talent, and had they not shipped him off to Zlonice to study music and German, by the way, because knowing the Czech language was not enough, it's easy to forget that Dvořák grew up in an occupied country.
And this is exactly what I was referring to earlier, and the struggles of nationality, of a community that feels they can be themselves. And in this symphony, I think those feelings are very much portrayed to a very deep level.
This is, when it comes to Prague, Dvořák, typical, it's the classic, as you know, musicians, at one point you have 4 or 5 jobs in your life. I know I had 4 in my life. Radio was one of them, and teaching and gigging, and and you're going from one to the other. Dvořák had the same, actually. When he came to Prague, he worked at St. Adalbert's Church, and you can see this isn't a beautiful cathedral. This is just one of Prague's many, many of course, Catholic churches, and he played the organ there from 1874 to 77. He played the viola in Smetana's Provisional Theater, and then the National Theater. And after that, he played, he taught, of course, both piano, and he taught violin, probably. And how much time does that leave you for composing? Not enough.
No.
And so he applies for this grant from the Austrian government for talented musicians and composers. And on the jury is Edward Hanslick, the famous critic, Johannes Brahms, famous composer, and Johann Herbeck, who's the conductor in Vienna. And they are very impressed. I think he sends like 15 pieces, a few symphonies. I mean, he overwhelms them with, despite the 4 jobs, an incredible amount of music. And they pick him. He wins it twice, I think, at least, maybe more. And when Brahms or whoever the committee writes to tell him he's won, the envelope is addressed, Antonín Dvořák, composer, Prague. And that's it.
And it got to him.
And it got to him, amazingly enough, and changed his life. And now he was able to marry. Here he is with his wife Anna in London in 1866. This is much longer. And our symphony, of course, is written for London, for the Philharmonic Society there. But he's able to marry, he's able to make money, he's able to compose in time. I mean, it's a game changer.
And this is another point that you're making, that the Seventh Symphony really is a turning point in his career, because he was trying to prove himself in the Austro-German culture, and then in England they loved him.
Yeah.
And he got the recognition so much more quickly than he did in his homeland and in Vienna.
Absolutely. And some people saw it, Brahms saw it certainly, and it's fascinating that Brahms makes him an invitation that says, why don't you leave that rural backwater town of Prague, and why don't you come and work in the capital, teach in the conservatory? And Brahms could not understand the power of homeland because Brahms had left his homeland of Hamburg and settled in Vienna, and Vienna was his place. He could not understand that family, language, culture.
Well, because the trip from Germany to Austria is not the same from
correct.
Bohemia
Yes.
to Austria.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could be talking for a whole ASO
would be
chat
a long-
about that
Yes.
part of Central Europe that
Yes.
is still fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. A good place to go to and take the orchestra in the summer, maybe.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong. Here is the Dvořák Monument in Prague, one of many and well-deserved. Dvořák Symphony Hall, of course, is in Prague at the Rue Delphinum. Really quite ecstatic and exquisite, rather. This is in New York City, in Manhattan, at Stuyvesant Square. Dvořák, of course, came to this country to write the Cello Concerto, the New World Symphony, the American Suite, the American Quartet, a few masterpieces.
He was one of the first famous European composers to visit this country.
And what's remarkable is the woman who paid him, who opened up this conservatory, which I think, I can't remember which school it eventually becomes. I think maybe Manus, I can't remember. But Mrs. Thurber, Jeanette Thurber, paid him 6 times his salary to come. And he she made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And so Dvořák comes to New York, and we are the better for it, of course.
But the interesting thing is that when he comes to the States, he encourages people to dig into the folk music of this country to find a new voice, and this is a little bit what he was trying to do with the New World Symphony, and so you can tell that he was all about roots and finding the identity that goes with the roots that you have been given.
Yeah, both African American and Native American, which he was very interested in, and helped bring out that music and the composers of that music. Yeah, quite impressive. Here we have Dvořák with friends and family in New York in 1893, and his wife Anna, son Antonin, etc., etc., etc. You cannot have Johannes Brahms with a family portrait because Johannes Brahms did not have family. And family was so important to him, so crucial, so vital. And I think that shows in his music. And I think that shows in the warmth of his music.
Yeah, I think that this is a quality of Dvořák's music that is very apparent. This is every note, as you said, that he never wrote a wrong note, a bad note, but it's not only that, but every note speaks so warmly. And it goes straight to the heart, because I have never met a person that would tell me that they don't like Dvořák music.
That would be
Not
a very
one.
strange person. This is his funeral in Prague in 1904, an event of national significance, a state funeral. Which is clearly
but by then
deserved.
he had established himself really at a level that even people like Beethoven couldn't, because Beethoven didn't really travel much beyond Vienna. So Dvořák at the time was able to say, I've visited the world.
Yeah. And here, this is him in Vyšehrad, where he's buried along with Smetana, along with the great heroes of Bohemian and Czech culture, needless to say. And Vyšehrad, of course, immortalized by Smetana in his tone poem of Lust, and Dvořák resting there today. This is the score to the symphony, and you will recognize Hans von Bülow, one of your profession, a great conductor, a great pianist. And Hans von Bülow, unlike many people in Vienna, very supportive of Dvořák's efforts. And even though this was commissioned by the London Philharmonic Society, who fell in love with Dvořák's Stabat Mater, he put Hans von Bülow's picture there. It's also fascinating that Dvořák's publisher, Simrock, who is Brahms's publisher, at first proposed to pay him half of what it was worth. And Dvořák said, no, if you don't want to pay me full price, I'll go to someone else. And Dvořák even says something like, I'm having a lot of problems with my garden now, and my potato crop didn't come out well, and I'm not going to give you this for less money than it's worth. And so Simrock gave in, and Dvořák is paid the proper amount for this masterpiece. But how interesting is that he put von Bülow there, who of course is famous as being the husband of Cosima Liszt, who eventually leaves him for Richard Wagner. But we forget what an incredible conductor, pianist. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he premieres the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto in Boston.
Yeah, and he was quick in recognizing talent, and I think this is the case with Dvořák, that he realized this is someone to...
Yeah. He could have been a little faster in recognizing Richard Wagner as a scoundrel,
Well,
but
yeah.
who among us? Maybe you're a little too close to it all.
There probably were politics involved in that.
Yeah, I think so. And this is what is in Dvořák's mind when he's composing this symphony: love, God, and my fatherland. And that is what is all, that's what this score is all about: love, God, and my fatherland. And it's unfortunate that you know, we think in some ways of maybe repressive regimes when we think of the fatherland. You know, we think of fascist regimes or Nazi regimes that use the word, but it's not meant in any way other than pride in Czech culture and a desire to have Czech independent thought and for the Bohemia to become an independent country, which it did in 1918.
I mean, to me, it's right now it's very easy to make the comparison to Ukraine and the
Absolutely.
Soviet Union or Russia now.
Yeah.
And this is what the Czech people went through. They had their own culture and they had their own way of life, and they were not people that wanted to fight the rest of the world, but they were always being taken advantage of and being sort of manipulated or governed by other bigger countries. And at some point they said, no, this is who we want to be. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, this is a grand thing. Here, Sir Donald Francis Tovey, who's always good for a bon mot, says, along with the 4 Brahms symphonies and Schubert's 9th, it, meaning Dvořák 7, is among the greatest and purest examples in this art form since Beethoven. Would you agree?
I would, yeah.
He's spot on.
Yeah.
And if you ever want a good quote, Donald Francis Tovey's always a good one. And here's what he says. I am now busy, Dvořák says, with this symphony for London, and wherever I go, I can think of nothing else. God grant that this Czech music will move the world. And I believe it did.
It did, and I think it did even so much more quickly than he was expecting. I think in many ways Dvořák was surprised that his 7th symphony was such a resounding success in London.
So the beginning of this, like the Schubert, is really dark.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the opening of each of the pieces in this program is sort of dark and
He says, the first subject of my new symphony flashed into my mind on the arrival of the festive train bringing our countrymen from Pest. Now, the opening isn't festive. The train is festive because they're coming to the National Theatre for a performance, and these are people who are coming from Hungary, and they're all discussing in Hungary and in Bohemia and in Slovakia, they're all discussing how to achieve some type of national independence from the Austrian regime.
they're all going through the same.
Same thing, exactly. So here's the very dark opening of the 7th Symphony. I mean, there's a beautiful trill that's right after that, which we left out, but what a fantastic bit of thematic writing.
Well, you can tell that he's opening the doors to a new world because there is so much to discover. He's just pointing, this is like clearing the stage for all what he's going to bring us.
Now, The second theme of this is a very optimistic theme, but in the middle, there's what I call like theme 1A, which is this sort of and it's sort of just an example of just how much melodic material Dvořák has, that this isn't even one of the central themes, that any other composer who would write this little bit of sunshine, this would be like the best thing they'd write for years, and yet with Dvořák, it's just,
It's just a transition.
It's just a transition. And it goes back. I mean, just tossed off nothing. And then when we get to the second theme, it reminds me of a Slavonic dance. For you?
Yeah, and is the second theme has very much this type of feeling that I was telling you, that is sort of a mix of happy and sad all at the same time. Very melancholic and very autumnal. And I think this is why I like performing the Dvořák Seventh in the middle of autumn, because I think it goes very well.
Yeah, nice choice. The right time of year. I agree. Because it's beautiful, but you also know it won't last.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe that's it. Here's theme 2. And all of a sudden, yeah, I see what you're saying. If I were to play the development and I were to play the recapitulation, we'd be here till Christmas. But those are his primary grains of sand that he uses. And
yeah, and you see, this is a melody on the major mode, and it should sound happy and light, and it does. But here and there, he puts these connotations of darkness that puts it all together in a way that is so masterful that I can't even explain.
Almost Mozartian, the
Yeah.
same way he goes, that shift from light to darkness. The second movement, he says, he writes a little quote. This is from the sad years. His mother had died. He had lost his oldest child, which sadly was not uncommon at this time. That doesn't mean it wasn't tragic, but,
Yeah.
but it's not uncommon. And Smetana dies in 1884 as well, who was a great mentor and fellow composer of Czech music.
And I mean, if just this opening, the first 4 measures of this movement are to die for. I mean, there is the beauty of his writing is beyond belief.
Yeah, so poignant. I'm smiling because I sort of always think about, if I could write something that good if I would just No. There's a reason why Dvořák is Dvořák and we are us.
This is when I listen to this music, I feel if I were to die now, I would be okay.
It would be fine. I agree. I love this next picture of him where he's feeding pigeons. Dvořák loved life. He loved animals. He loved the nature. He loved his family, his country. This is what I call the Alpine theme. It's an interesting dialogue between horn and flute.
Mm-hmm.
One of, once again, many beautiful moments in this work. You have a good horn player?
Yeah.
Good. That's going to be essential.
Yeah. we have a very good orchestra, so I can't complain.
This is good. This is good. Exposed writing. It's so wonderful. So why did I pick Brahms? I picked Brahms because this reminds me very much of the Brahms First Symphony. This beautiful dialogue, an alpine horn, and a flute that Brahms writes at the
It's
end.
the fourth movement of the first symphony.
Absolutely. See if you think it's reminiscent also. I think so.
You have the novelty of the horn, which sounds like a call in the Alps, and then you have the lightness of the flute that is more the contrasting thing is like a bird call.
Yeah.
But it's also naturally fitting together. That is
elegant and fantastic and a beautiful homage. And you know, there's a nice connection also between Brahms' Third Symphony and the Dvořák Seventh Symphony, I think, as well.
And that's actually the one that, in many ways, influenced
inspired him.
Yeah,
I agree. This is Brahms, Smetana, and Dvořák. It's in a wax museum in Prague, and that just shows you these are national heroes. These are the Washington and Jeffersons of the Czech country. And well, they should be, because they were so influential in creating the identity, this national identity.
And I think that's something that we take for granted now, but without these cultural figures, these countries would not have developed to what they are. I mean, it's even what happened in Italy with Verdi. Mm-hmm. Verdi was such an important figure that people used him to make the case of we want to be independent of the Austro-German
and Verdi portrayed it on stage.
Yeah.
And as did Smetana, as did Dvořák with Czech folk songs, and with the songs my mother taught me, the gypsy songs, so stunning. Absolutely. These are icons. These are national icons, so important. And here in wax, kind of fascinating. So I hit the button too fast, and what I want to point out is exactly what you're saying. Initially when I was writing the subtitle for the slide, I said agitated section. Then I listened and I said, well, it's only part agitated. It's also it's joyous and it's agitated at the same time.
And these mood shifts happen quickly, and they don't last too long because the life keeps going, and it's also well integrated that you are almost constantly being in that flow of up and down that is hard to describe, but it takes with you.
Happens in the cello concerto also, which I hope one day we'll talk about. Where in the second movement, where he remembers his sister-in-law who had passed, and all of a sudden we get to an incredible level of passion and intensity. Now, third movements of symphonies, if you're Haydn, Mozart, they're minuets. If you're Beethoven, they're scherzos. If you're Brahms, they're intermezzi. If you're Tchaikovsky, they're waltzes. And if you're Dvořák, they're furiants. This is such a unique and just unique to Dvořák movement, I think.
Yeah, and this is why he helped finding that shaped a national style, because he found, as you say, the third movement in a symphony usually was a dance movement. He found a Czech dance to use in the third movement that was not a minuet, that was not a waltz, because those all came from different countries. He used a furiant, which was a Czech dance, and also with that compound rhythm of the 3/4 and the 3/2 that happened simultaneously. that doesn't happen in any other type of music, and is so characteristic.
I think that also these movements, the third movements from the seventh, eighth symphonies, they also, you can excerpt them. I mean, they're perfect. They're almost like Slavonic dances.
Yeah, I think it's
own.
one Slavonic dance, a little bit more elaborated. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're just hearing this symphony for the first time, start with this. Start with this movement. You'll fall in love with them, and then you'll fall in love with the rest of it. That's what happened to me, actually.
Just that opening.
Yeah.
Is so charming.
Yeah, and welcoming and inviting. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And in the last movement, we go back to D minor, because this is a movie about serious. This is a movie. This is a. It almost is a movie.
Yeah.
This is a symphony about serious things, and we begin with this astonishing octave leap and return to D minor, and like the opening of the symphony, the opening of this last movement is a serious.
And again, it's a little bit of the idea that I was telling you, that the struggle is like the reach out to the high note, and then the drop is like constant effort in getting there.
Aspiration.
Yeah.
Aspiration, yes, absolutely. And the Bohemian people, the Czech people will get there. And powerful music, and exquisite and powerful music. For this theme, I had to show you Dvořák en famille. He's on the left. He's second from the left. You can see him, and the proud elder statesman of this group of people who meant so much to him. Now, if the first theme is aspirational, the second theme of this is determined. I mean, this is determination, and just begins with a little timpani, and just nothing will stop what's going to happen.
To me, it sounds almost like a recruiting dance. It's like we are gathering all of our efforts together, and we are going to get it.
Yeah. And last but not least, another Dvořák monument in Prague. You can see Prague Castle in the distance on your right. This is the third tune, which finally we get to something that you can dance to, and something that is on the
happier sounding.
A happier sounding theme, yeah. So, a fantastic symphony, and as I say, if I had put every part of this that I wanted to put in it, we'd be here a long time, and at least we can present the main themes of it. But lovely concert, and really should be a very special November 4th and 5th.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure talking.
Likewise.